Welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love, with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Has the way that love has arisen in you seemed out of place or even taboo? My mission is to expand the conversation of love in the world. Is it possible to have deep, loving, healthy relationships? Have you ever been curious about having more than one relationship or partner at a time? Get ready to transform in love, be courageous, and set yourself free. In this show, we talk about relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. I shed light on things that are not always talked about with conversations about expanding love. The Elizabeth Cunningham Show starts now. Hi, welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show. My name is Elizabeth Cunningham. I'm your host. I am so excited for today's episode. Before we get into it, just right off the bat, before we get into today's episode, I just want to say you can tune into this show every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time on the Transformation Network. So I hope to see you every single Tuesday. Perfect. Where we talk about love, where we talk about sex, where we talk about relationships, and specifically we're talking about things that are more taboo. Uh-oh, my computer wants to update. Don't do it. Don't do it. There we go. Technology. But specifically, we talk about topics that are a little bit more taboo. Things that we don't often talk about, things that we shy away from, and also things that we don't like are not even on our radar. And that brings me to today's episode, which is about gender and sexual fluidity and some energetic play. And so which are things that are maybe gender is on people's radar, but sexual fluidity and energetic play, not really even on people's radar. And gender in the way that we're talking about it today, with our amazing guest that I'm going to introduce here in a second. I'm just tantalizing everyone. But we don't think about gender in the way that we're going to talk about it today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest, Ryan Brown. And Ryan spent most of the past 10 years helping people improve life function and quality of relationships through behavior change. And as a certified erotic blueprint coach, he continues to help people increase joy and uncover their authentic selves by reclaiming their birthright of pleasure. Oh, I love that. And owning their sexuality as an essential and significant part of the full human experience. Ryan also enthusiastically welcomes those wishing to live more fully into the spectrums of gender and sexuality. He helps people dismantle the rules, beliefs, and boundaries they never chose for themselves in the first place so they can live their true purpose. Ryan is working to create a world bursting with joy and bursting with joyful people embracing kindness, compassion, and love through self-awareness and personal responsibility. Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited. It's very, very fun.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm super, super excited for you to be here. Thank you so much. And with that, what I really want to dive into is really the first topic is gender. I think that us as, coaches inside of, sex and relationships, we talk about gender a lot. However, it's not really a topic like most people are like, you're either a man or you're a woman, and that is the end of the gender conversation. However, you talk about gender fluidity. Tell us a little bit more about what that is.
This is such a huge topic. It seems very much the best thing to do for me to totally speak about my own personal experience and how, where things are at and where things used to be. That seems like a good place to start. So,
okay.
I would start from like recognizing that I was born where I was born, into the family I was born into, with the culture that I was given. And I spent my whole life being a boy. I was a little boy, and that was never a problem. And I never like had any inkling or any desire to do anything different. And I grew up and I became an adolescent, and I liked girls. And I mean, for all the world, I fit all the parts and pieces and bits and components that say boy, 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 young man, man.
Right.
However, some things that I'm only like recognizing now in retrospect, sort of were pointing at something missing. And one of those things is like a long-term frustration at feeling like, what does it mean to be a man, and who's going to show me that? And for a long time, I pointed outward towards other people as like, hey, dad, why didn't you show me? And I'm sure he did. He tried to show me, right? He showed me a certain thing. But nobody was showing me that stuff. And I spent a lot of time being frustrated by that. I also spent a lot of time, I feel like this happened really early in my life, in my 20s, probably. I really keyed into the ways that I saw men behaving in the world that I did not want to have anything to do with. And I guess we would probably lump all that into like toxic masculinity, is what we call that today. And that's just, sometimes a disregard or a lack of awareness. I mean, I won't list all the things. I think we probably all have an idea of what it means. So, feeling those things and then continue in my life. I got married, I had kids, family, like all heterosexual, all feeling male, all fine, totally fine, until I got into my current partnership. And what ended up unfolding inside of that relationship is this energetic expansion. And so we'll get more into talking about that, I'm sure. But what it really led to was, oh my God, there's so much more to me than what I was told that I was. And I never sensed that until I had sort of this energetic expansion of myself. And what ended up happening is I started to recognize all the ways that I could be in the world, both how I looked, how I talked, how I moved, how I spoke, all of those things. I was like, actually, there isn't a limit to that. I can be all of the things. It's just that I'm not supposed to.
What are some of the things that you that either you're not supposed to do? This is kind of a two-part question. What are some of the things that you're not supposed to do? And we're kind of speaking as a man right now. It's kind of the general flavor of it. But what are the things that you're like not supposed to do, or that you saw that you're not supposed to do as a man? And what are some of the things that after this expansion, and like we said, we'll go into that here in a little bit. But after this expansion that you experienced, what are some of the things that you're actually able to do now, or that you even like, doing now, that you've taken on as more of an expression of yourself?
Super good questions, and really speaks to what's challenging about this, is that it's honestly scary. It really is. So things that
Why is it scary for you?
Because I'm afraid of what will come back at me. Like if I were to show right now, the way that I'm showing up to you is not exactly totally how I would most want to. I was conservative, right? And it's because I'm worried about what comes back at me from the world. And I'm coping with that, right? We all have to go at the pace that's okay for us to feel safe and to explore and make sure that if something crazy happens, I've got the support that I need. But that's really what it is it's fear of showing up authentically and having that not fit, right? I've got a lane I'm supposed to stay in, right? And that's my man lane. And if I go too much out of that lane, then it gets scary, because that's not what I'm supposed to do. And people don't know how to respond. People get confused, people get mad. And so that's where that comes from, is a fear.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for expanding on that, because I think that speaks to a lot of people's experience as well, is that it's scary to be authentically you because of the ways that we're supposed to be and not supposed to be. That it can get it's not just like, because we talk a lot about like expansion and like the happy, yummy things, but it's also like the other part of it is like just absolute fear of just like people do get angry. people
Mhm.
do get, confused, and then confusion can lead to anger, and it's also that unpredictability, like what are people going to do with
Yep.
this information? And so no, I totally get it, it's scary. And so and also thank you for just being who you are and expressing that. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I'll let you continue. So what are some of the things that you've expanded into?
Well, probably the most basic sounding thing is just what I want to wear. And so I like really just discovered, when I walk into a department store and I go look at the men's section, I'm like, how fucking boring. Are we allowed to say things like that on here? I forgot to
Yes,
ask
you
you
can
about
say that.
language.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to be too salty, but every once in a while something will come out. Uh,
Okay.
so boring, right? There's just like nothing there. I hardly want to wear anything on that side, right? Um, but when I look at the women's side of the department store, I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's cute. And so this is what starts to happen is I see things that I'm labeling as beautiful or cute or flowy. And I'm like, that would be great. I would love to wear that. I would love to see what that looks like on me. I would love just looking at like I want to wear it, right? But I'm not supposed to do that because
Mm,
that's way out of my lane. So that's one of the things that has happened. And so I'm just experimenting with how I can do that. And I get to do that in the safety of some certain spaces. And I think that's a really important piece of exploring this is like, where's your safe spots? Where are your safe people? Unfortunately, I have those. So I get to explore in that arena. And then I get to like experiment with, well, how do I want to go in the world? My hair, right? This is hilarious, right? When I was a little boy, I had curly blonde hair, it was much blonder than this. And I had people tease me all the time, like, oh, Ryan, one day some girl is going to love your curls. And I hated it, hated it. It made me so mad to hear them say stuff like that.
mm,
And then the pandemic hit and I couldn't get a haircut and my hair getting longer and I'm seeing the curls. I'm like, you know what? Actually, I kind of like those.
mm.
And so now I'm like, you know what? Screw this. Like, I like my hair. Can I like my hair? Is that okay? Is that okay if my hair is long and curly? Because that's kind of a little bit, at least outside of my lane. It's not like there are no people out there who identify as man that don't have some long curly hair, but especially the way that I want it to look in my mind isn't really man style, right?
Yeah.
It tends to be more like those descriptors of like, well, I kind of want it to feel kind of cute. And I
Mm,
just recently got some clip-in hair extensions, like a little color streak. And I just like, I like that. And I want to be able to do that. So this is the issue is gender is a lane, a box that I'm supposed to stay in. And what I'm pushing up against is, you know what? For me to be fully expressed, I can't stay in that lane. And it costs me to do that.
mm,
If I'm not fully expressed, if I'm not doing that, then I can't bring my whole self to the world. And in my work, how am I supposed to be the coach that I want to be to help people in the way I want to help them if I'm hiding parts of myself?
mm.
So that's what's going on. Another example I can give of an emotional variety is that all through, as long as I can remember, being around newborn babies and being a boy or a young man or a man, almost never does anybody ever ask me if I want to hold a baby.
Mm.
And I think that that is an experience probably shared by a lot of people who look like men or identify as men. It's just assumed that you're not interested. And the baby gets passed around to all the women, right? And I was really sad and hurt by that. And so a way that I would want to be in the world is to present myself in a setting where there's a new baby and then I can be like just as excited as everybody else who wants to see and hold the baby. And then I'm not kind of ignored or it's not fair to say ignored. It's just there's this unspoken, unconscious assumption, right?
Right.
That I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
So that's more of like an emotional example, I think, of how I don't
Sure.
want to stay in my lane.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it is an example that's kind of like broader. I mean, all we're talking about, touches on society, but it's kind of like that broader, like how people even interact. It's not even how you feel about yourself, but it's also how people interact with you, right?
Yes,
Um,
totally.
anyway, This is beautiful. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, what I really want to talk about is more inside of like, what is this energetic expansion? We talked about what it looked like before and what it looked like after.
Yeah.
And what was that like? What does energetic expansion even mean? So let's talk about that after we come back from the break.
Okay.
All right, welcome back from the break. Again, my name is Elizabeth Cunningham, and we are on the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love, here talking to Ryan Brown about gender and sexual fluidity and energetic expansion. And so before the break, we talked about, gender and kind of started to talk about the fluidity of gender and how it really, we look at gender as and you used a beautiful example of like, you're in your lane, right? Like as a society, we expect you to stay in your lane, in your gender lane. And that, for some of us, that doesn't work, and you were so brave in sharing your own personal story inside of, how you're exploring outside of your lane and really discovering that about yourself. And what you mentioned was that how you discovered this about yourself was through this energetic expansion. And so I think that a lot of people listening are like, what is that? What do those words even mean? Energetic expansion. What is that?
Okay. Well, acknowledging that this may be like, what, to a lot of people, here's how I best can sort of put it in a package. If I think of myself and my human existence as a physical form, a mental and intellectual stuff in my brain, emotional stuff, and then the last piece of it is something that people will attach different names to, but it could be spiritual, could be vibrational, could be energetic, right? Mm-hmm. So me consists of those four main chunks of self, right? So when I talk about energetic expansion, I'm talking about that fourth dimension, and how people who are into a spiritual practice of some kind will have their own version of energetic expansion as they grow in their practice, right? So when I talk about energetic expansion with respect to gender and sexuality, what's really going on for me is that, oh man, this is really like wild. So I know my physical self. I'm not crazy, right? I look at my body, I see the parts that I have all the typical expected man parts, right? I've got sperm delivery apparatus. Okay.
Sperm delivery apparatus. All right.
And everything looks typical, right? I hate using all these terms because there's a huge variety, even physically, among people that a lot of us don't acknowledge. I do want to acknowledge that. I appear typical, right? So the physical piece of it is like, yep, this is me, and I know that I don't have other parts, right? But when it comes to my mental and intellectual self, and it comes to my emotional self, what is stopping me from feeling and thinking and imagining that I have anything that I want? Do I have the imagination to say that I have a vulva or breasts? I can imagine that in my mind. I think any human can if they choose to. Right? So those other two dimensions start to open things up, right? It's like, oh, well, mentally, I can imagine having these things, and then emotionally, I can feel everything, right? Am I limited in my emotional capacity because of the physical parts that I have? I think a lot of people maybe think that's true, and that's part of staying in our lane, the emotions you're allowed to show and engage in versus the ones you're not. But the truth is, I have access to everything, all the emotions, because I'm a human being. Mm-hmm. So that whole category is covered. And then we get to the spiritual or the vibrational, the energetic aspect of myself. And I'm like, so energetically, and this is where things get hard to explain, but this is really about recognizing that I am made of energy, right? All the things that are going on inside my body all the time are energetic transformations and exchanges, turning this thing into another thing so that I can use energy and move in the world. And when I die, I'm going to be recycled, essentially, right? So we are balls of energy. And energetically, like, let's talk about it from the sexual standpoint, right? What's an orgasm? If not an energetic release of some kind, right? It comes with physical components, it comes with emotional components, comes with imagination. It also has to come with that fourth dimension in some way, right? And for some people, sex can be extremely spiritual, right? For sure, it can be vibrational, like literally shaking, right? That totally happens, right?
Right.
So what ended up happening for me in my partnership as we played, like, I just started to feel things that weren't physically a part of myself.
Hmm.
And that's both in the sexual context as well as the gender context of like, well, gosh, who do I want to be? And what is actually limiting me in the ways that I can be? So I'm going to stop there
Hmm.
because there might be
Yeah, I was
suggestions.
just like, whoo,
Yeah.
that was a lot. Like even going back to the because like we, you know, I think everybody followed with the physical bit. It's like you have the physical body that you have, got it,
Yes.
checks out. And then you know, we started talking about like mentally, you can imagine that you are something different. And or rather, you know, correct me as I say things if I'm not fully representing what you said.
Yeah.
And so like the mental part, and that kind of like blew my mind just for a second. And I was just like, oh, like, yeah, in the imaginative realm, that you really can imagine that you have different parts that you don't physically have, but you can imagine that. I actually just had a conversation earlier today with someone about their dream last night, where in their dream they had the physical body of a typical male person, right? Like the chest hair, like, what did you call it, like the sperm
Delivery apparatus.
So good. They had that. And in their physical real life form, they do not have those things, right?
Mhm.
And so it is like you can imagine that, and it's just like, oh yeah, like I really could. And you don't think that you could think that, like it's not even a thought that you think that you could think.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, that gets left out. Can imagine being the Lone Ranger. Can I imagine being She-Ra?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's brilliant. And so then you go to the emotional level, and like having, and I can get that, like having the emotions where it's just like, oh, like for me being in you know, people see me as a woman, right? People see me as and I do identify as a cisgendered woman, and so how people see me is how I identify. And you know, one of the things that I don't get to express really is like aggression,
Hmm.
right? And so like, oh, like having this like emotional aggression, anyway. But going into this more spirit, so like I wanted to reiterate that because I think, you know, you went over it so beautifully, and this is such a new way of thinking, right? This is such a new way of like imagining or really going into these realms. Do you find that when you talk to people, that people are kind of mind blown by this?
They are. And at the same time, it isn't actually new. It's maybe new to us or maybe new to our culture, but like this is all coming from my yoga practice. This is how we look at least in the tradition that I've been following for some years now. It's like we look at those four dimensions. That's what we're addressing in the practice of yoga. So I didn't like invent that stuff. And yes, it's true. When I tell people about this, people are like, what do you mean? What does that look like? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant. Oh my gosh. Okay. And the reason that I didn't really go more into the spiritual and energetic side is that now that you've kind of introduced this to us, and that you have really expanded our way of thinking inside of this realm, that's what I want to talk about after our next break. Is
Yeah.
like, okay, let's talk about that. So now that we have like an idea, we're a little bit more grounded in what we're talking about. When we
Mhm.
come back from the break, let's talk about what is this like energetic, or, like you said, and other words that people use are like spiritual or vibrational. What is this realm? How do you access it? That's one question. How do you access it? And then how do you play there, and how do you expand there, and what's possible there? Oh my God, so good. I'm so excited. All right, well, that's what we're gonna talk about when we come back. All right, welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show. My name is Elizabeth Cunningham, and we are here courageously expanding love. And today we're specifically courageously expanding inside of gender and sexuality and energy. And so before the break, we talked with our wonderful guest Ryan about what does it actually look like to have an energetic expansion? Like, what do you even mean by that? So if you missed that, go back, rewatch. And now we're going to talk about, so now that we know, kind of have a little bit further grasp on what this energetic expansion and like expanding into like gender and fluidity, what does that actually look like? Like, how do you play there? How do you play in that energetic expansion? How do you access it? Like, what's possible there? Share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, what's possible there is apparently pretty much anything. But let's try to put it in some concrete terms. First of all, I wish I could tell everybody like, this is it, and this is how you define it, and this is what I can't. I really can't. All I can do is share what's gone on for me and what's happening, and I'm working on it, and it's unfolding, and it's happening, and that's what it is. And I feel like that's life. So that said, speaking specifically sexually now, right? If I'm having sex, I'm engaging my physical body, I'm engaging my mind and my imagination, I'm engaging my emotions, and I'm engaging in some way my spiritual, vibrational, like energetic self, right? If I'm not, then I'm disappointed. I mean, frankly, that's awesome sex. Those are some of the ingredients for like awesome sex, like include everything, right? What happens if you're not engaged emotionally? So, all those components are necessary. But if I focus on the energetic one, then basically what happens is this: even though I don't physically have a vulva, for example, I don't physically have a pussy, and energetically, I totally do. And so that unfolded between myself and my partner as we're engaging in being together and being connected on all of those levels, being with the physical, being with the mental, being with the emotional, and being with our energetic selves. Things just come, things just happen. And so that's what's hard, is it's like, I can't tell you how, because it just came, right? And it was more about acknowledging that it came and not running and hiding and not freaking out and going, oh my God, what the hell just happened, right? But what becomes possible is that I'm no longer limited to having sex in a particular way. I don't have to stay in my lane sexually, right? So with a partner, I can be I can do everything that matches my physical self if I want, but I can also totally transform into what we would think of as a really feminine state, very receptive, and I can feel penetration in parts of me and feel sensations, really feel them in places where I physically don't have them. So I know that that's probably really like, what the hell, Ryan?
Right. Yeah. It does sound like a little bit out there, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, is that like, what comes up for me is like, oh, well, is that like body dysmorphia? Is that, taking on, is that like hallucinating, like what? So I guess to like pinpoint my question, and like, I know that it's not, right. But to kind of pinpoint my question is like, when you say that you feel like you have an energetic vulva, and you feel like, energetically you feel like you get penetrated sexually,
Mhm.
like, what does that mean for you? How does that feel? Like, what happens for you when you're experiencing
Well, believe it or not, it just feels incredible. And it's only happened a couple of times at this point, but once it's happened once, I know it can happen again, is to actually have an orgasm, right?
you have an orgasm?
Yeah, in my pussy, my energetic pussy, right? I know this is really far out there, but what I'm really trying to get
Wow.
at is that sex exists in all four of these dimensions, right?
Mm,
If I spend all of my time being focused on the limitations of, or the limitations of my physical body, what my physical body can do, well, that's it. But
mhm.
I've just repeatedly said, like, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like, I'm not limited in those capacities. So, and if all of those components are part of sex, then why does the physical rule?
Mhm.
Why would the physical be the only thing that ultimately matters?
Yeah.
So it just what it does is just create this interesting situation where I can feel the energy in me switch from being connected to my male body, and it just moves into a female sense, and the location changes, like sensations in the genitals, right? It's like it's changing over time. It used to be indiscernible. I used to just like feel bigger,
Mhm.
and then things started to separate. So now it's like I can feel it when I'm really in my cock, right? And in that energy, and I can feel the energy shift to my pussy. And then if I'm with a partner who also has that energetic stuff going on, we can play in all kinds of different ways.
Mm.
And I, I wish I wish that I could articulate this more clearly. Here's one thing I will say for questions about like, dude, you're nuts, right? This is like dysmorphia, and want to like pathologize or categorize this. What I can say is
Right.
this: when this is happening to me, I am deeply connected to my partner. There is so much love and connection being exchanged when that is happening. And the sensations are as real. I mean, they're real. Like, what am I supposed? I'm not making this stuff up.
Right.
So, and I'm present. I'm totally present for the whole thing. There's no like checking out. There's no blanks where I don't remember something that happened. Like
Mhm.
I'm very, very present for the entire experience, and very, very with my partner. And we're very open and able to communicate about this stuff.
Yeah.
So that leaves me feeling like, well, this may sound really out there or really
Right.
unusual or really strange, but
But it's a real experience that you
yeah,
have had, are having, will continue to have and expand into.
yeah,
Um, and I think that what makes things difficult for people, and I want to speak specifically to people who are listening or watching right now,
yeah,
is that what we tend to do when we're listening to something that is unfamiliar to us, or when we can't fully grasp or articulate, is that we assign it to something else that we think is most like that,
yeah,
right? And
sure.
then we make assumptions based off of the thing that we assigned it to. And so I want to caution anyone who's listening or watching that if you've assigned what Ryan is sharing to
Mm,
something else that is not that, then the assumptions or conclusions that you may be gathering, whether they're good, neutral, or
positive,
bad,
right?
whatever, yeah, whatever assumptions that you may be, making, or conclusions that you're drawing, consider that whatever you're referring it to, it's not that, right? So
Yeah,
unless you have, had this like specific experience and you're like, oh, I know, because I know that other people have had this experience. I've talked to other men who have had, or like men who grew up cisgendered men, um, who have had an experience like this. So I've talked to other people who've had similar experiences to you. And so it's like I personally have never had that experience. But being able to recognize that this is an experience that I haven't fully felt and can't feel in my body or can't liken it to anything else that I have felt. Right. And I really do just have to take your word for it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, because that has been your experience.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that it's, personally, I think that it's really incredible. Like if we can open ourselves up to really be like, oh, like what would be possible for me
Mhm.
if I were to start opening up, imaginatively, opening up emotionally even more. And then what would it be like to really open up more energetically? Or like you said, people have different words for it. So
Mhm.
maybe if energetically doesn't match with you, maybe spiritually does, or maybe even vibrationally does,
Mhm.
right? And so yeah, just really getting curious about like what would be possible in this realm. And then my question is, how do you, I know that you're a erotic blueprint coach, so you do help people inside of this realm. How do you help people access this type of energetic expansion?
Well, it's really about play.
Hmm.
So there's got to come, first thing that has to come is an openness and a willingness, right? I mean, there can be just a like, nope, that doesn't exist. Okay, well, I can't work with that. But if there's a window of like, that's really interesting. I don't get it, but okay, I'll check it out, right? Then it's playtime, right? It's like, okay, well, let's see how each body, how each individual person experiences energy, right? And it's like, okay, let's pay attention to when you get the chills. What is that? Like, that's energy, right? That's energy moving through your body. So when does that happen and why does it happen? Playing games with touch or no touch, right? It's like hands close to self, or how far away can you close your eyes and sense the presence of another person, right? There are plenty of exercises in tantric practices that sort of get at some of this stuff, the kinds of things where you'll be with your partner across the room, right? And experiment with coming closer and closer and closer until you can feel each other. And there's different levels of closeness to pass through. So it's a series of playing and exploring, and then starting to ramp that up and using all those dimensions, right? Using your imagination. It's like, okay, imagine there's an energy field around your body.
Mm.
Just if you can't feel it, okay, that's all right. Imagine if there was, where would it be and what would it look like?
Mm.
Does it have a color? How far off your skin is it? Is it fuzzy, or is it a clean straight line? Like what would it look like if it did exist? And that is, on the one hand, a person could say like, well, you're just making stuff up. On the other hand, it can be an exercise in exploration of like, I wonder what might actually be there that I haven't ever noticed before.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
that's so fun. I'm just like, that feels so good. And like even just having you share that, it just feels so good in my body because I'm all about like curiosity and play. And so I'm like, oh yeah, if I could be like curiosity, if I could be curious, if I could be curious and open, what would be possible there? Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. Okay, we're going to take our last break. And then when we come back, what I really want to, I want to wrap this up inside of, what do you want people to take away from this,
yeah.
and what can people take away from this? And also, Ryan has a really awesome giveaway for y'all, or promotion. I forget. Ryan has an announcement and it's awesome. And we're going to share that when we come back. Welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show. Thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Elizabeth Cunningham, and we are courageously expanding in love. And today we've been talking about gender and sexuality and fluidity and energetic expansion. And this has been a freaking mind trip, mind blowing episode. And so if you're just joining right now, please watch the replay or else none of this is going to make any sense.
Yeah.
So Ryan, first of all, thank you so much for coming on here. And I know that when we talk about energy and like energetic realms, it's hard to articulate that.
Yeah.
You know, because it's such an experiential thing. And anyone who's experienced things, you know, energetically or spiritually, and then has tried to like say it out loud is like, how do you word that? Right.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you can't like put English to that type of experience. And so really thank you for coming on here and doing such a beautiful job of doing that, because it's not easy.
It's kind of you. I think poets probably do it the best. Actually managing to convey something about energetic experiences. So pick up Hafez if you're curious and read some of that.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. Thank you for the resource. So as we're, as we're kind of like pulling all of this together, you know, what is it like, if there's one thing, just one takeaway that you really hope that listeners and people watching get out of this show with you, what would that be?
For me, this is about wholeness. And that has been the most meaningful part of having this very interesting transformation or experience at this time in my life, is like, this is about wholeness. I have lived my whole life as a part of what I am, as a part of what I'm capable of being. And by saying like, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to continue to stay in my lane. I'm going to go ahead and do the things that are already inside of me. I get to be more whole. And that's really what it feels like. So when I talk about gender, you know, people are so used to the binary that they want, well, what are you trans? Like what, you know, they want a new label. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to be something different. I'm trying to be my whole self. I'm not discarding anything. I'm just bringing more in, or actually letting more out. I don't know that I'm bringing more in. It's all there already, right? And so when it comes to sex, it's the same thing. You know, it's like, it's wholeness. I feel like a more whole person, and I bring that to my partnership, and there's been nothing negative as a result of this strangeness, right? It's all good. It's all beautiful. And then I get to bring that to my work. So when I'm working with clients, like, the more whole I am, the more I am able to see them as whole. And that is like, that's the work, is like, come on, I just want to help people be whole, right? Whatever it is that's hiding, whatever is tucked away into there, whatever is unacceptable because somebody said it was, right? Let's bring that out into the light and explore it a little bit, look at it, and discover like how freaking beautiful it is. And then people get to go out into the world and expand more deeply into their gift. Why are you here? What's the point of being here? Do that more fully. And that's totally been my experience. You know, I just get to show up and be more of myself. And that's really all I have to offer the world. Right? Wow.
Yeah, I giggled because you were like, that's all I have to offer. I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Well, sure. If you want to go all the way there, at least from my perspective, like, we're all divine creatures. So in fact, I've been toying with this idea that my life is an experiment of universal consciousness. So universal consciousness is out there exploring itself, because what else is there to do for it but explore itself? And so it grabs a bunch of components and throws it out there and says, I wonder what will happen if I do this. And that's me, and that's my life. And that's you, and that's your life. And we interact together, and universal consciousness learns something about itself through these experiments. And we're all just going to go back. I'm going to die. I'm going to leave this body, and my energy and everything is going to cycle back into universal consciousness and get spat out in some other form as some other experiment. So I'm just trying to get back, right? I mean, there's the wholeness of me in this life on this earth, but then there's the larger sense of wholeness of being, of being sent back into the wholeness of the universe or the oneness of everything. Or, I mean, this, to me, this doesn't mean we can't talk about God. And I know that gets dicey when we start bringing in dogma and religion and things in people's frameworks and belief systems, but what is God if not everything? And we're all being returned. So this is a wholeness thing.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that I can take away personally from you sharing that is that we're all whole already.
Mm.
And it's really that experience of our wholeness.
Yeah, becoming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's really beautiful. All right, if there is one action, and I want to get to what you're promoting and what you're giving away, so short and sweet. If there's one action that people can take from this episode, what is it?
The next time you have an opportunity, go outside and sit in the sun and feel that sun radiating on your skin, and just sit there long enough to feel the change that happens inside your body when you do that. The temperature increase, the warmth, and where it shows up in your body. And just know that what you're experiencing right there is energetic stuff. So if you're wondering about like, what is this energy stuff? Well, that's a perfect example of it. The radiation of the sun is energy. When it shines on you, it heats up your body. What does that feel like? Pay attention to it. That's an experiment worth doing.
Beautiful. Brilliant. All right. What are you promoting, Ryan?
Well, right now I've got 4 open slots for one-on-one or like couples style coaching packages. So I'm ready. I know there's people out there who are ready. It's like someone out there is like, you know what, Ryan, that is what I want.
Totally.
So I've got 4 open packages for that right now. And I can't tell you the details of them because we talk about it, right? So you can expect it to be like 6-ish months or so of working together.
Beautiful. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, and to get into that, I just want to offer people like a free call that starts things off, and it's up to 90 minutes. And I feel like it's super valuable because what we do in that call is I hear you. We talk frankly about things that sometimes people maybe have rarely, if ever, talked with anybody about. And you get to be heard by somebody who is really, really consciously practicing like acceptance, like you're whole, you're not broken. I can hear you. I can be with you. I'm not going to judge you. And we'll see, what that's like. And some people find that experience alone to be really moving and really, really valuable. Talk about what you want and why you don't have it. So that's what I'm offering.
Beautiful. Yeah. So just to be clear, what the promotion is Brian has 4 open slots. So if you've listened to this entire episode and really related to the things that, he said, and you feel like he would be the person to really help you and, hear, like you said, hear you. And I know from personal experience that Ryan holds such a beautiful space.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I have felt very heard and held by you in the space that we've shared. So I appreciate you. And that the giveaway is the 90-minute call. Like, that's kind of a huge deal. That's an amazing giveaway. That's very generous of you. So Ryan's information is in the show notes. And so please check that out. Ryan, would you like to say how people can get a hold of you?
Best way is through my link tree. And is that something that people can see from your?
Yeah. So once the episode is aired, so if you're watching the replay of this, it's on the screen. Oh, it's on the screen too. Okay, great. So even if you're watching this live, listening to it live, it's on your screen. So you'll be able to see it. And then if you're watching the replay, it's in the show notes as well. So you'll be able to see all of, just click on the link tree link, and then set that up with Ryan. And yeah, Anyway, in the last minute or so of our show, I just want to extend my gratitude and thank you so much, Ryan, for being here, for sharing, for being so open and vulnerable. Yeah, this stuff is not easy to share, and you've done it with such grace and style. And I feel full from being here with you. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
You're super welcome. It was wonderful, and I was grateful for the opportunity.
All right, beautiful. Okay, to everyone who is currently watching or listening, to everyone in the future who's currently watching or listening, we love you and continue to go on this path of expanding and being courageous in love.
You have been listening to The Elizabeth Cunningham Show, Courageously Expanding Love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Tune in live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where we shed light on relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. Learn to love yourself and create the relationships you want. Connect with me at ElizabethAnnCunningham.com. That's ElizabethAnnCunningham.com.